Gold dips, but Israel just hit Yemen. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainslie Insights, brought to you by Ainslie Bullion, Ainslie Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainslie Group celebrates 50 years. Today, we welcome back Sam, who's once again been watching the unfolding geopolitical turmoil and keeping us up to date with the latest developments. How are you going today, Sam?
Good, Chris. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Very interesting weekend. We had lots of things unfolding on the geopolitical front, but really, you started off by focusing on what happened on Friday, where we had gold really showing quite a large dip just before the weekend close. And it looks like everything else was sort of falling as well, including stocks and bonds. It was really a general risk off sort of selling environment. What was your take on the drivers behind that?
Well, it looked like, a lot of things have consistently been going up. For example, gold has gone up for a couple of weeks in a row. So it was really due for a pullback, as well as, you look at US tech was already pretty weak. And then you had the CrowdStrike outage, which put a lot of fear in people,
Mm.
that it's not an invincible bet to just go with big tech all the time. Can have some serious problems. And we also have things coming up. I mean, developments just came out today about Biden pulling out of the race. So there was some anticipation about this, as well as Fed speakers coming out. So there's a lot of fear in the markets and a lot of uncertainty, which wasn't helped by what happened last week with CrowdStrike. So all the signs of de-risking, deleveraging. You could see the dollar went up in classic fashion. People just wanted to sit on a bit of cash and wait and see what's going to happen.
And that dollar one's an interesting one. I've been thinking about that myself. Do you think there was enough there to potentially impact the rate cut decision that, like, I mean, no, we're all anticipating or speculating around? Was it, or do you think it's up and it's heads back down again now that we've had the bulk of that play out? Like, what's your initial take on that?
Whether the US dollar movement will affect
Or
rate cut
whether
bets.
it's done, like, was that just a response move that continues on its way higher again, or because I see it right in the middle. I can't pick it either way at the moment.
Well, if you look at the US dollar currency index, it did jump back over a major support level, but I mean, it could just fall through again. And as far as the rate cuts go, I mean, people have a lot of anticipation for this upcoming meeting, but Waller did make it quite clear that don't expect us to do anything in our next meeting. Wait until September. So it's pretty clear. I don't know what's going to change. I know they do play the classic game of they all come out and say one thing and then say the different thing the next day, and then it keeps going until Powell surprises everyone. So it's a bit of a game a lot of times, but they haven't really said anything different.
That's fair enough. It's too far out to speculate yet, but I'm just trying to get that feel myself because it's a bit confusing for me at the moment. You noted specifically though, some analysts, they were talking about the dip in gold, and that was something that sort of caught my attention as well. And they were putting that down to fears that Chinese retail buyers would potentially slow down. I suppose that's on the back of recession fears and other things that are starting to swell again. What's your take on that theory?
Well, yeah, I've heard this theory before, and it hasn't played out several times. They're talking about the price of gold's going up, which means investors in India, investors in China are going to stop buying gold, so you shouldn't buy gold. And that's
Mm.
not what I've seen play out several times over. If you think about that statement, it's saying this thing's going to keep rising, so you shouldn't buy it. Does that really make sense? You know, if you talk about a stock, you say, oh, here's this new stock, this new company that's competing with Nvidia, for example. It's gone up a lot and it's probably going to keep going. Would that dissuade people from buying it, or would it encourage them?
Mm.
That's something I have a hard time with believing. That sounds like a bit of fear mongering, just in my opinion about gold. Now it does, retail buyers do get pinched, but in the situation where they're looking for investments and they might be liquidating other investments, like in the stock market, which in China has not created any, it hasn't created much confidence in
Mm.
investors. Then you have the property market that hasn't created much confidence. I don't really see that as a guarantee, that retail investors are just going to focus on property in the stock market and just forget about gold.
No, and you've mentioned this before. There's a long history there as well that you can't just. We have to remember sometimes, and we forget this in countries like Australia, where we haven't had those intense capital controls. We haven't had those intense periods of currency fluctuation like they're experiencing. That we might just think that we change our focus easily, but if that's entrenched, you've got it in from birth almost that it's important to own some physical gold. It changes the whole narrative around it, doesn't it?
Just to, go on the flip side, I have seen it happen before where, for example, when Trump was in power and he put a lot of pressure on China, there was an instance where, the property market and everything started to become really difficult for Chinese investors. And there was a couple days there where investors were liquidating gold in
Mm,
quite significant quantities, enough to move the global market down in order to try to save their property investments.
mm,
But what's happened since then is potentially that the Chinese investors have matured a little bit more and they've seen a lot of things happen with the property market. They've seen it go from bad to worse. And they've also seen banks, which we reported on before, just vanish. So
mm.
the situation's got a little bit scarier in China.
And there's a lot of reasons there, absolutely, for holding that physical. And even the example you used, where they were forced to liquidate the gold, well, you can only liquidate it if you've got it. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
reasons, reinforced reasons to hold it. Changing topic slightly, but the headline that we were talking about that sort of started off with there, Israel bombing Yemen. Another significant development. You've been following this ongoing. You've been talking to us about this and really warning us about the potential for some of these things. Is this the escalation point you've been warning about?
Well, it's definitely one of the escalation points. Now, I had already, done all this news on gold, and then as soon as I finished, the news came out that Israel bombed Yemen, so that changes a lot of things. You can see gold's already started to recover. It's already in the green on the daily candle,
Mm,
and will that continue? Nobody knows. But one thing that has happened is that so the Houthis, who I don't know, purposely or accidentally ended up hitting an apartment in Tel Aviv with one of their drone attacks. Israel said will respond to escalation with escalation. And that's interesting because that's exactly what the other side said. We'll respond to escalation with escalation. So you get an idea that you don't really have to ask if there's going to be an escalation. If we go by either of their words, it's guaranteed escalation. And that just means, this continuous escalation is going to potentially drag in more parties, which is what everyone's been worried about and which is what has happened so far.
And is that enough to tip us into the global recession angle? Is there enough there that it could really spill over beyond the local to become more of a global issue? I mean, you've talked about that before.
Well, we've talked about before Germany getting their military draft ready because
Mm.
they're convinced that the Ukraine-Russia issue is going to spill over into Europe and it will be at their doorstep and they want to have soldiers ready. So this is just another piece of the puzzle, except it's in the Middle East. And look, will it turn into World War III, or are we already in World War III? I have no idea, but it's definitely a bad sign when two countries are saying they want to just keep escalating, and there's no sign of them having any peaceful negotiations.
Well, on that sobering note, because obviously you can't resolve these things without at least some indication of peaceful negotiations on the horizon, but we're not there yet. So we'll continue to watch this space. But thank you for keeping us up to date on that and your work on that today. I realize it came up at the last minute, but quick pivot. So on the ball. But thank you very much, Sam.
No, that's what gold's there for. Thanks, Chris.
Certainly is. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.